What's going on, everybody? Kalipas Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the Motorola Moto G 5G and the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE. So I know what you're probably thinking, the Moto G 5G is really an entry-level 5G phone, and on the other hand, the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE is basically a flagship phone. Why would anyone want to compare these two phones? Well, overall, while the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE is obviously a much higher-end device, there are a lot of features and extra things this phone has that not everyone is going to need. And in a lot of situations, a more entry-level 5G phone like the Moto G 5G is really all some people are going to need. And with the huge price gap between the two, you may end up realizing throughout this video that while the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE obviously is a much higher-end device, you might actually end up getting more value for the money with the Moto G 5G. So that's definitely something to keep in mind during this video. Now before we go any further, as always, I do want to remind you to hit that subscribe button. And if you want to learn more about either of these phones individually, I will be linking to several other videos about them in the description, as well as some information about pricing and availability. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the Moto G 5G, we're getting a 6.5-inch 90Hz IPS LCD display with a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 270, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and an 81.4% screen-to-body ratio. With the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE, we're getting a 6.4-inch 120Hz dynamic AMOLED display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 411, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and an 85.3% screen-to-body ratio. So overall, I would say the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE has a much better display, but in comparison, the Moto G 5G actually really isn't that bad. The display is a little bit larger, not really by much, but you can kind of tell here. And in addition to this, while the S21 FE does still have a higher refresh rate, the Moto G 5G really isn't far behind with a 90Hz display, and you can kind of see the movement on the screen is a little bit faster and smoother than your average 60Hz phone. So again, definitely not bad here. But that being said, of course, with the S21 FE, the dynamic AMOLED is going to give us much better looking colors, better brightness, and the viewing angles are going to be a lot better. So if you're outside in the sun, for example, the S21 FE is going to be a lot easier to see than the Moto G 5G. In addition to this, with a 1080p resolution versus only 720p, the image on the S21 FE is going to be a lot sharper. So if you're consuming a lot of content, if that's really the main thing you're doing with your phone, then you might want to consider getting the S21 FE because you will get a much better experience. But that being said, if you're doing something where the quality doesn't matter, like maybe reading for example, or if you're just not going to be consuming a ton of content, the Moto G 5G will still get the job done. Now for storage, with the Moto G 5G, we're getting 256GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, and with the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE, we're getting 128GB with no microSD card expansion. Now keep in mind, the S21 FE does have a variant with 256GB as well, but of course it's going to be quite a bit more expensive, and the Moto G 5G does have microSD card expansion too, so if you have a lot of photos and videos, for example, that's definitely going to make a difference. So in general, if you do want a phone with a lot of storage, the Moto G 5G will have an advantage here. Now for security features, both of these phones have fingerprint scanners. With the Moto G 5G, it's right here on the power key, definitely a convenient spot for it, and with the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE, it's right here in the display. And aside from the fingerprint scanners, both phones also have Face Unlock as well. But starting with the Moto G 5G, let's give these fingerprint scanners a try and see how well they work. There we go, one more time. And there we go. And now for the S21 FE. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see there, both fingerprint scanners were real fast and responsive. And again, remember, both phones do have Face Unlock too, so if you want to use that instead, you always can. Now taking a look at the camera setups here, with the Moto G 5G, we got a nice looking hole punch design for the front facing camera. This camera is 13 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. For video, this phone has a max recording quality of 1080p in both the rear and front cameras, so nothing really out of the ordinary there. With the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE, we got pretty much the same design for the front facing camera. This camera is 32 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a triple camera setup with a 12 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel telephoto lens, and a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera. And for video, the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE has a max recording quality of 4K at 60 frames per second in both the rear and front cameras. So in pretty much every way, the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE does have a much better camera setup here. While it doesn't have a dedicated macro camera, you can kind of use the telephoto lens as a macro camera. Now of course, if you really want a dedicated macro camera, the Moto G 5G will have a slight advantage there, but in pretty much every other way, the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE does have a better camera here, and the photo and video quality with this phone is pretty much flagship level, whereas with the Moto G 5G, while it's not bad, it's definitely not going to be nearly as good. So in general, if you're taking a lot of photos and camera quality and features is really important to you, then the Samsung Galaxy S21 S21 FE might be worth getting, but if you're more of a casual camera user, if you just need a couple nice photos every now and then, maybe for social media for example, the Moto G 5G, while not being quite as good, is still going to get the job done. As far as RAM and processor go, with the Moto G 5G, we're getting 6GB of RAM with the MediaTek Dimensity 700 processor. With the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE, this phone is getting 6GB of RAM as well, with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 processor. Now keep in mind, there is another variant of this phone with 8GB, but this specific phone in my hand is the 6GB version. Now that being said, I did run Geekbench 5 benchmark tests on these phones, and as you probably already guessed before even starting this video, there is a pretty big difference here. With the Moto G 5G, we're getting a single core score of 545 and a multi-core score of 1684, and with the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE, we're getting a single core score of 1081 and a multi-core score of 3227. So obviously here, the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE is going to be so much faster, and there's really nothing this phone can't do. So if you're doing higher end activities like mobile gaming, maybe playing Call of Duty or Fortnite or something that really takes a lot more processing power, or you're just really going to be on your phone a lot, the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE will have a huge advantage here. But honestly, from my experience, for more normal daily activities like browsing the web, using social media, streaming content like videos and music and stuff like that, the Moto G 5G, while obviously not being flagship level, is still going to get the job done perfectly fine. So if you're not really a heavy user, if you're not doing super high performance activities or anything like that, then honestly there's really no need to get the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE, because while this phone obviously has a lot more processing power, you're not really going to feel the full advantages of it unless you're either doing really high-end activities or you're just on your phone constantly. Now as far as the battery goes, the Moto G 5G actually does have a bit of an advantage here, with a 5000 mAh battery supporting 10W fast charging versus the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE with a 4500 mAh battery that supports 25W fast charging. So if you want the phone with the biggest battery between the two and the best battery life and longevity overall, then despite the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE not being bad, the Moto G 5G will actually have an advantage based on that alone. Now that being said, the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE with 25W fast charging and wireless charging for that matter does have much better charging features, but I feel like charging features are a little bit more niche and not everyone is really going to be able to take full advantage of them. You might either not have a wireless charger or maybe you don't have a fast charger. Whatever the case may be, obviously if you do want really good fast charging and wireless charging, the S21 FE will have that advantage. But again, in general, I feel like the battery size is probably going to be more important to more people. So in that case, as far as the battery goes, the Moto G 5G again will have a bit of an advantage. Another thing to keep in mind is that with the Moto G 5G, unfortunately this phone does not have NFC, whereas the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE does. So if you like to make contactless mobile payments using tap and pay, then definitely keep this in mind because the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE will have an advantage in that case. Now in conclusion, normally I would go over which phone is better, but in this case we all kind of know which phone is the better device here, seeing that after all the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE is a flagship phone and the Moto G 5G is really just an entry-level 5G phone. So let me rephrase that. Which phone is going to make the most sense for you? Now honestly, I can see 3 different cases where the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE is really going to make the most sense for you, and that is, first of all, if you're consuming a lot of content, and I'm talking like hours of playing games, watching videos, that kind of thing, or maybe you're on social media all the time, if having a really good display is important to you, and that's something you're willing to pay a lot more for, then the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE will be a great choice in that case, especially considering there are a lot of other flagship phones that are a lot more expensive that don't really have better displays than this. Another area where the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE would make a lot of sense is with the camera. With this phone, it takes amazing pictures. In fact, for most of this year, I have used this phone to record all the videos on my channel, and in general, if you're taking a lot of photos and videos, you want a wider variety of features, and you really want flagship quality photos without paying $1,400 for something like a Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra, the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE will be great in that situation. And then finally, the third reason you might want to get the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE over a more entry-level 5G phone like the Moto G 5G is the processing power. Now, I personally wouldn't choose a really fast phone like this if you're just going to be doing more basic activities like web browsing, social media, that kind of stuff, because the Moto G 5G will be able to do all of that just fine. But if you're doing really high-end activities like, again, playing Call of Duty, Fortnite, one of those games that takes a lot of power, and you're just going to be on your phone all the time, maybe you use it for work, for example, or something like that where you need a phone that's going to withstand really heavy use. In that case, the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE is going to be a great choice, especially considering there are a lot of phones with the same kind of level of performance that are quite a bit more expensive. But honestly, in any other situation, if you're just using a phone for more basic activities, you're not really taking a lot of photos, and you're not really consuming content all the time, I feel like the Moto G 5G, despite not being nearly as good as the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE on paper, is honestly going to be a much better choice because this phone is quite a bit more affordable. But this concludes my comparison between the Motorola Moto G 5G and the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE. Again, if you want to learn more about either of these phones individually, I will be linking to several other videos about them in the description, as well as some information about pricing and availability. quickly. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Khalipa's Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.